Ariv was born in a small village, a place surrounded by green fields and tall trees. But unlike the children playing freely outside, he had never seen the world. He had been blind since birth, and life for him was a series of sounds, smells, and textures rather than colors, shapes, or faces. From the moment he first opened his eyes, darkness had been all he knew, and though his parents tried their best to make his life normal, there was always a shadow of worry in their hearts. His mother, Mira, often watched him struggle quietly as he reached for objects, stumbled over the uneven ground, or tried to play with other children who ran around laughing. She remembered the day he first tried to run after them and tripped, scraping his knees, and her heart had shattered into pieces. She had held him close, whispering, "It's okay, my son, it's okay," while feeling a pain she could never fully describe. Ariv was a bright boy in mind, curious and full of questions, but his blindness made even simple tasks feel impossible. He loved listening to stories from his father, Rajan, about the world outside, about mountains, rivers, and the colors of flowers. He imagined them as best as he could, but the images were always incomplete, hazy, like shadows he could never touch. In school, Ariv struggled more than others. Not because he was slow or unwilling, but because books and lessons were designed for eyes that could see. He relied on braille sheets. But even then, the world seemed closed off, distant and frustrating. Every time he asked questions about how things looked, classmates would shrug or make jokes, not out of cruelty, but because they didn't understand his perspective, and Ariv felt isolated, his heart heavy with longing. His mother often cried silently at night, praying for a miracle, while his father would sit beside him, trying to reassure him. "One day, something will change. Ariv, you'll see. I promise." But even Rajan's heart carried doubt, for he had long given up hope of any ordinary medicine or doctor curing him. The village had its share of stories, some full of hope, others of despair, but nothing seemed to offer a real solution. Each day, Ariv's life repeated itself, waking up, touching the walls of his home to navigate, listening to birds outside, feeling the breeze on his face, and longing for a world he could never see. Even simple joys like walking barefoot in the grass or watching the sunset were mysteries, imagined only in his mind. Despite the darkness that surrounded him, Ariv had a spark of curiosity that refused to die. He would listen to the chatter of villagers at the market, imagining the faces behind the voices. He would feel the texture of leaves, the rough bark of trees, and wonder about the colors they might hold. Sometimes, he would imagine sunlight spilling over his skin, warmth turning into shapes and shades he had never known. Yet, along with curiosity, came frustration and sadness. For the more he imagined, the more he felt the cruel distance between himself and the world others could freely see. He would ask himself, "Why me? Why can't I see?" And in the quiet of his room, tears would slip down unseen but heavy on his heart. Mira and Rajan did their best to fill his life with love and hope, introducing him to sounds of music, teaching him about scents of flowers and spices, and telling him about colors, as if he could feel them in the air. Yet, even their endless encouragement could not remove the gnawing emptiness Ariv felt. He longed to recognize his mother's smile, to watch the sunset with his own eyes, to see the blue sky and the birds flying freely. Every night, he would lie in bed, listening to the crickets, chirping and the wind rustling through the trees, imagining a world beyond darkness, a world full of light. Then came the whispers in the village about a healer, a mysterious man who traveled from town to town, who people said had the power to restore sight in ways no doctor could. Some called him a magician, others a spiritual guide, but stories of his miracles spread quickly. Reaching Ariv's mother one afternoon while she was fetching water from the well, her heart leapt with cautious hope, and she rushed home to tell Rajan, "There is someone who can help Ariv. I must take him to see." This man, Ariv listened quietly, unsure what to think, his mind filled with skepticism, fear, and a tiny flicker of hope. Though he wanted to believe, Ariv had been disappointed too many times. He had gone to doctors who gave him pity and empty promises. He had tried remedies that never worked, and each failure had made him retreat further in a doubt. Yet he could not ignore the chance, small as it was, that this healer could change his life. Something inside him stirred, a quiet whisper saying, maybe, just maybe, I could see. The thought was thrilling and terrifying at the same time. And, as night fell over, the village, Ariv lay awake, listening to the distant sounds of the world he longed to witness. And for the first time in his life, he felt the possibility of a future where darkness might finally give way to light. Ariv woke early that morning, his heart heavy with curiosity and nervousness. He could hear his mother moving around the small house, her footsteps soft but purposeful, as if every movement carried hope. She had been talking about the healer nonstop, describing him as a man with a calm voice and eyes that could see into your soul. Ariv listened, unsure whether to feel excitement or fear. The idea of someone claiming to restore sight felt like a dream, too strange to believe, but deep inside, a tiny spark of hope refused to die. By mid-morning, they had begun the journey to meet Guru Dev, the mysterious healer. The path led through dusty village lanes, past fields where farmers worked under the blazing sun, and through groves of mango trees. Ariv held his mother's hand tightly, feeling the bumps of the uneven path beneath his feet. Every sound, every scent, felt sharper, as if his senses were trying to prepare him for something extraordinary. His mind raced with questions. Would he really see? Would it hurt? And most of all, would it last? When they arrived, Guru Dev was sitting under the shade of a large banyan tree, surrounded by a small crowd of villagers who whispered in awe. He was a calm man, with long hair tied at the back, wearing simple clothes that fluttered in the gentle breeze. His eyes were striking, dark, deep, and full of understanding. They approached cautiously, and Mira bowed her head slightly, whispering, "This is my son, Ariv. He has never seen the world." Guru Dev looked at Ariv and smiled gently. "I know, my child, and soon you will," he said, his voice steady and soothing. Ariv stepped closer, unsure what to do with his hands or where to look. He could feel the energy around the healer, a strange warmth that seemed to touch him without physically doing so. Guru Dev motioned for him to sit on a mat, then spoke quietly. "Trust me, Ariv, what I do may feel unusual, but you must have faith." Ariv swallowed hard, nodding, feeling a mixture of fear and excitement swirl inside him. The healer began preparing a small clay bowl, filling it with a mixture of mud, water, and crushed herbs. The smell was earthy, strong, and slightly bitter, yet there was something calming about it. Guru Dev explained each step as he worked. "This is not ordinary mud, child. It carries the power of nature, patience, and belief. It will help your eyes open to the world." Ariv listened intently, trying to understand, though part of him thought it was impossible. When the time came, Guru Dev gently applied the mud to Ariv's closed eyes, his hands steady and careful. "Close your eyes and breathe slowly. Feel the mud. Feel the world," he instructed. His words were soft but commanding, and Ariv obeyed, feeling the cool, thick texture of the mud spread across his eyelids. A strange sensation that sent shivers through his body. For a moment, nothing happened, and Ariv's heart sank. But Guru Dev continued speaking, chanting softly, encouraging Ariv to focus. Minutes passed, and then something changed. A flash of light, faint and shimmering, seemed to appear behind Ariv's closed eyes, startling him. He blinked, unsure if it was real or just his imagination. "Do you see it?" Guru Dev asked calmly, and Ariv nodded hesitantly, feeling a mix of fear and wonder. He could sense shapes, like shadows moving in front of him, a hint of a world beyond darkness. His heart raced, pumping excitement through his veins. Mira watched with tears streaming down her face, holding her breath. She could see her son reacting, sensing a change she had prayed for every night. "Keep going, Ariv," Guru Dev said, his voice steady. "Let your mind open, let the world reach you." Ariv focused, breathing deeply, tried to accept what was happening, though it felt almost unreal. The mud, the healer, the light. Everything combined into a moment that seemed magical. It's strangely natural. By the time the ritual ended, Ariv's mind was buzzing, his senses alert in a way they had never been. He could faintly distinguish outlines, the rough edges of trees, the shapes of people around him. It was only a beginning, but it was real, and for the first time in his life, Ariv felt hope that he might see the world not just in dreams, but for real. Ariv felt a strange warmth spreading across his face as the healer, Guru Dev, continued to chant softly. The mud on his eyes was no longer just cool or thick. It seemed alive, almost pulsing gently with a rhythm that matched his heartbeat. He could hear the soft whispers of the villagers around him, but their voices sounded distant, as if he were floating in a separate, quiet world. He tried to focus on the sensation, on the healer's voice, and slowly, his mind began to clear. Guru Dev instructed Ariv to breathe deeply. Feel every part of the mud, every touch, every sensation. Do not fear, for your mind will guide your eyes, he said. His words were calm, confident, and Ariv felt an unusual trust growing inside him, something he had never felt with doctors or medicines. This was different. This was more than a remedy. It was a connection, a bridge between his world of darkness and the world of light he had only imagined. As Ariv sat still, his body tense with anticipation, he began noticing flickers of movement behind his closed eyelids. Tiny sparks of color, like sunlight reflecting off water, danced in his mind, startling him. He opened his eyes slightly, expecting darkness, but for the first time, he could see faint outlines, shapes moving in a soft, hazy glow. The edges were blurry, and the colors were pale. But it was real, more real than anything he had ever felt. The healer spoke gently. Do not rush, Ariv. Your eyes are awakening slowly. Each moment you feel the light, you're seeing more. Each breath brings clarity. Ariv focused, trying to hold on to every flicker, every hint of color. He could see the green of the grass beneath the mat, the brown trunks of the nearby trees, and the shimmering silver of sunlight falling through the leaves. It was subtle, almost fragile, but it was there, and it was miraculous. Ariv's mind raced with emotions. Fear, disbelief, and a deep, bubbling joy. How could this be happening? Could he truly be seeing? He moved his hand slightly in front of his face, and for the first time, he noticed a faint shadow, his own hand moving in the soft glow of light. His heart leaped with a mix of excitement and wonder. He could not contain a small, shaky laugh, which startled the villagers, and even Guru Dev smiled knowingly. Good, Ariv. You're doing well, but remember, the journey is just beginning. Vision is not only about your eyes, but about your mind, your belief, and your courage. The healer explained. Ariv nodded, tried to absorb every word. He felt like he was waking from a long, endless sleep, the darkness that had defined his entire life slowly retreating. The villagers watched in awe, whispering among themselves. Some had doubted the healer, while others had come hoping for miracles. Now, they could see one unfolding before their eyes. Ariv moving his hands, recognizing shapes, feeling the texture of the mat beneath him, experiencing a world that had been hidden for so long. His mother's face was wet with tears, and she held his hand tightly, whispering words of encouragement. Yes, my son, you are seeing, you are seeing. Minutes passed like hours. Yet every moment felt like magic. The mud, the chants, and the healer's gentle guidance worked together, helping Ariv's brain and eyes connect in ways he could never have imagined. He could distinguish the bright colors of flowers near the banyan tree, the glint of sunlight on a small metal pot, and the soft movement of leaves in the breeze. Each detail, small and delicate, filled his heart with awe. By the end of the ritual, Ariv's eyes were clearer, his mind alert, and his heart full of hope. He knew this was only the beginning, but for the first time, he could see the world around him, not as a dream, not as imagination, but as reality. The healer smiled at him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. Remember, Ariv, patience and belief will complete your vision. You are ready to take the next steps. Ariv nodded, feeling a new sense of courage and determination. His life, once defined by darkness, had begun to change in ways he could never have imagined. Ariv slowly opened his eyes, his heart pounding in his chest. The world in front of him was not as blurry as before. It was sharper, brighter, and filled with colors he had only ever imagined. He blinked several times, trying to make sense of the shapes, the light, and the movement around him. His mind struggled to believe that this was real, not a dream or a trick. The green of the grass beneath him seemed alive, waving softly in the breeze. The leaves of the banyan tree above shimmered with sunlight, each vein and curve now visible. He could see the villagers standing nearby, their faces distinct, their expressions full of wonder. Mira's face caught his attention first, her tears sparkling in the sunlight, and she smiled at him, a smile that spoke of years of hope, fear, and endless prayers. Ariv raised his hand slowly, staring at his fingers, moving them in front of his eyes. He could see every curve, every joint, and the light reflecting off his skin made him gasp. I can see my hand," he whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. Guru Dev nodded quietly. "Yes, Ariv, you are beginning to see, but there is more ahead. Do not rush. Allow your eyes to adjust, and your mind to accept the vision." He turned his gaze toward the village around him, noticing details that had always been hidden. The small clay pots outside homes, the colorful fabrics drying in the sun, the tiny flowers growing between stones. Everything seemed magical, as if the world had been waiting for him to finally notice. Ariv's heart swelled with awe, joy, and disbelief. He wanted to run, to touch everything, to memorize every color, every shape, every movement. Mira held his hands, guiding him gently. "Look, Ariv, the world is beautiful. Just as I told you, every flower, every leaf, every face you see is part of your life now. Don't be afraid." Ariv took a deep breath, trying to absorb it all. He felt like he had been reborn, the darkness that had surrounded him all his life melting away, replaced by light, hope, and endless possibilities. The healer guided him through the small courtyard, pointing to objects and asking him to describe what he saw. Ariv's descriptions were slow at first, hesitant, but soon grew confident. "The pot is round, red, with tiny cracks. The flowers are yellow, bright, and soft." Each correct observation brought smiles and whispers from the villagers. Their awe made Ariv feel proud, but more importantly, he felt free for the first time in his life. He noticed the sun shining on his mother's hair, making it glow like gold. He could see the wrinkles on his father's hands, the texture of their clothes, even the sparkle of dust floating in the sunlight. Every detail, small and large, filled him with amazement. The world was no longer an abstract idea, no longer limited to imagination. It was real, alive, and waiting for him to explore. Ariv moved toward a nearby tree, reaching out to touch the bark, feeling its rough texture. He realized that sight was only part of the experience, that the world was a combination of what he could see, hear, and feel. A new understanding began to form in his mind. Vision was not just about light, but about connecting with everything around him, absorbing its beauty, its details, and its life. As the day progressed, Ariv's confidence grew. He began walking slowly through the village, recognizing faces, shapes, and colors with increasing clarity. The villagers watched him in amazement, some silently crying, others whispering about the miracle they were witnessing. Guru Dev followed quietly, guiding when necessary, but allowing Ariv to discover the world on his own. By sunset, Ariv stood on a small hill overlooking the village. The orange and pink sky stretched endlessly above, and he could see the distant fields, the river glinting like silver, and the mountains rising softly on the horizon. A sense of peace and wonder filled him. His life had changed completely, the darkness replaced by vision, the unknown replaced by a world of possibilities. For the first time in his life, Ariv felt truly alive. The world was no longer something he had to imagine or dream about. It was real, tangible, and breathtakingly beautiful. And deep inside, he knew that this was only the beginning of his journey. Ariv could see the world, and yet, a strange feeling lingered inside him. Excitement mixed with fear, and disbelief gnawed quietly at the edges of his mind. Every time he blinked, the colors and shapes around him seemed almost too vivid, too perfect, as if his eyes were seeing a world that might vanish the next moment. He tried to convince himself that it was real, but a tiny voice whispered doubt. What if this is temporary? What if it disappears? His mother noticed his hesitation, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. Ariv, trust yourself. Trust what you feel. You are seeing, truly seeing. Believe in it, she said softly, her eyes shining with hope and relief. But Ariv's mind was overwhelmed, the years of darkness making it difficult to accept sudden light. Even the smallest things, the flutter of a bird's wings, the shine of sunlight on water, made him gasp, feeling both joy and unease. The villagers gathered around, eager to see the miracle for themselves, whispering in awe and curiosity. Some reached out to touch his hand or guide him, and each time, Ariv realized that his brain, long accustomed to darkness, struggled to interpret all the new information flooding his senses. He stumbled slightly when moving, startled by colors, shadows, and shapes he had never processed before. His heart raced with a mix of thrill and panic. Guru Dev noticed Ariv's uncertainty and stepped closer, his calm presence reassuring him. Ariv, your eyes have begun to see, but your mind must learn to understand. Vision is not only about light, but about patience, belief, and learning. Take each moment slowly, do not rush. He instructed, his voice was steady, like an anchor in a storm, and Ariv felt a strange peace settle over him, encouraging him to try again. He started by observing small details, focusing on individual objects, a flower here, a stone there, learning to recognize shapes, textures, and colors together. Slowly, his confidence grew, and the fear that he might lose sight began to fade. Each small success was like a step on a long staircase, each step bringing him closer to accepting that his vision was real. His mother encouraged him at every turn, pointing out objects, smiling whenever he recognized them correctly, and Ariv felt gratitude and love he could not fully describe. But adjustment was not easy, and challenges came quickly. The world was more complicated than he had imagined. Shadows confused him. Sunlight sometimes hurt his eyes, and objects that seemed familiar in sound or touch looked completely different in light. Ariv found himself overwhelmed at times, needing to sit and breathe, try to reconcile years of darkness with the brilliance surrounding him. Even the villagers, who meant well, sometimes crowded him, asking questions or touching objects he was trying to focus on, adding to his confusion. Yet, through all this struggle, Ariv discovered something important. That sight was not simply about seeing, but about learning, patience, and trust. He realized he could not rush his mind to accept what his eyes had gained, and that mistakes, confusion, and hesitation were all part of the journey. Each misstep taught him more about himself and the world, and each small success built courage. By the end of the day, Ariv felt exhausted but hopeful. His brain ached from processing so much new information, but a quiet determination had begun to grow. He wanted to explore more, to recognize every detail, and to understand the world he had waited for all his life to see. Guru Dev smiled, placing a hand on his shoulder. You are learning quickly, Ariv, and soon your eyes will see clearly. But remember, belief and patience are your greatest tools. Ariv nodded, looking out at the village, the trees, the river in the distance, and for the first time, he felt ready to face the challenges of his new life. The darkness that had defined him was fading, replaced by light, learning, and a sense of adventure. He realized that while the miracle of sight had begun, the true journey was just starting, and that every day would teach him more about the world, about people, and about himself. Days passed, and Ariv's confidence grew. Each morning, he woke with excitement, eager to see more of the world around him. The once overwhelming colors and shapes were slowly becoming familiar friends. His eyes, guided by the healer's wisdom, were learning to understand, and his mind was beginning to match what he saw with what he had imagined for years. He explored the small courtyard first, touching and observing everything at his own pace. The rough bark of the trees, the soft petals of flowers, the glimmering metal of water pots. Everything seemed magical, yet with every observation, he felt more grounded, more certain that the world was real. The villagers watched him with awe, some whispering that he was a miracle, others simply smiling at the joy radiating from him. Arav began to notice things he had never imagined: the delicate movement of leaves in the wind, the way sunlight scattered on the water, and the gentle patterns of shadows on the ground. Each detail fascinated him, and he wanted to memorize everything, to understand how the world could be so beautiful, so full of life, after years of darkness. One morning, Guru Dev led him to the edge of the village, where a small river flowed calmly, reflecting the sky like a mirror. "Look, Arav, see how the water moves, how it catches the light," he said softly. Arav knelt by the riverbank, his fingers trailing in the cool water, feeling the movement while his eyes drank in the reflection of the sky, the trees, and the mountains in the distance. For the first time, he felt a deep connection to the world, as if he were a part of it rather than just an observer. His mother and father stood nearby, watching him explore with pride and wonder. "You've never been able to see like this before," Mira whispered, tears streaming down her face. "And now, look at him, experiencing everything with such joy," Rajan added, his voice thick with emotion. Arav smiled, realizing that his sight was not just about him, but about sharing these moments with the people he loved. As the days went on, Arav began helping others in small ways, guiding younger children, pointing out colors and shapes, and showing them how to recognize objects. People from nearby villages came to hear about the boy who had gained sight after years of darkness, and Arav became a symbol of hope. His life had transformed, and he wanted to help others experience even a fraction of the joy he felt. Even the skeptics began to change, witnessing Arav's abilities and the miracle of his transformation. They had doubted, but now they could see the truth in his eyes. The miracle was not just in the healer's mud or chance. It was in Arav's courage, his patience, and his belief. He had trusted, endured, and embraced the unknown, and now the world was open to him in ways no one could deny. Arav's days were filled with exploration, learning, and wonder. Each morning brought new discoveries: the vibrant patterns of butterflies, the reflections of clouds and puddles, the intricate textures of bark and stone. Everything was alive, and everything held a lesson. He began to understand that vision was more than seeing. It was noticing, feeling, and appreciating, connecting with the world in ways he had never imagined. By evening, Arav often sat quietly, reflecting on the journey he had taken. From years of darkness to this new life filled with color and light, he felt gratitude unlike anything he had ever known. Guru Dev would sit beside him, saying little, but Arav knew the healer's guidance had been the key to unlocking not just his eyes, but his understanding of life itself. One night, as the stars began to twinkle above, Arav whispered softly, almost to himself, "I never knew the world could be this beautiful. I never knew I could feel so alive." And in that moment, he realized that the miracle was not just seeing. It was living fully, appreciating the world, and sharing that light with others. His journey had begun in darkness, but now it would continue in wonder, hope, and endless discovery. Word of Arav's miraculous sight spread far beyond the small village. People came from neighboring towns, curious and skeptical. Some whispered that it was impossible, while others prayed that the miracle might be true. Journalists, doctors, and strangers arrived, eager to see the boy who had lived in darkness and now walked in light. Arav watched them all with a mixture of nervousness and quiet pride. Some visitors questioned him harshly, asking how it had happened. "Are you sure you can really see? Could this be a trick?" they demanded. Their words made Arav's heart pound. And for the first time, he realized that miracles often face doubt. The villagers defended him quietly, telling stories of what they had witnessed. But outsiders needed more, proof, something tangible, and Arav felt the weight of that expectation. Guru Dev remained calm, standing beside Arav, his presence steadying the boy. "Do not worry, Arav. Your eyes see, and your experience is real. Some will doubt, some will test, but their skepticism cannot take away what you have gained. Trust yourself," he said softly. Arav nodded, drawing courage from the healer's confidence, understanding that belief in himself was more important than anyone else's approval. Ariv began to demonstrate small tasks to show his vision, recognizing objects, pointing out colors, reading simple signs, and even identifying people he had never seen clearly before. The visitors were astonished, some silently amazed, others openly cheering, yet a few continued to challenge him, insisting that science must explain what they saw. Ariv felt a strange pride. He was no longer just a boy who had lived in darkness. He was proof that hope, faith, and courage could change everything. But the attention also brought new challenges. People wanted him to perform constantly, to prove again and again that he could see. Ariv felt exhaustion creeping in. The world, once full of wonder, sometimes felt overwhelming with demands and questions. He longed for quiet moments by the river, where he could reflect and simply enjoy the beauty without pressure. During one such quiet moment, Ariv noticed a small child sitting alone near the riverbank, blind like he had once been. The child's face was filled with sadness and frustration, and Ariv felt a deep connection, remembering his own years of darkness. He knelt beside the boy and spoke gently. "It's okay. You are not alone. There is hope, and one day, you may see the world just like I do." The child's eyes brightened, and for the first time, Ariv realized that his miracle could inspire others, not just himself. Ariv began spending his days teaching children like him, guiding them gently, showing them ways to understand the world even without sight. His experience became more than a miracle. It became a mission. Each small smile, each spark of hope he ignited in others made him feel that the journey had purpose, that his sight was not only for seeing beauty, but for spreading it. The outsiders who doubted slowly began to change as well. They watched Ariv's patience, his courage, and the joy he shared with others. Many could no longer deny the transformation, realizing that science, medicine, and logic had limits, and that some experiences, some miracles, belonged to the heart, not just the eyes. Ariv understood then that true belief was stronger than skepticism, stronger than doubt. Even the villagers, who had seen the miracle unfold from the beginning, began to treat Ariv differently. With respect, admiration, and renewed faith, they saw him as a symbol of hope, of courage, and of the extraordinary power that lay within ordinary people. Ariv felt humble, knowing that the miracle was not just his, but belonged to everyone who believed, everyone who nurtured hope in impossible times. By the end of the week, Ariv had fully embraced his new role, not just as a boy who could see, but as a guide, a teacher, and a beacon of hope. His life had transformed completely, from darkness to light, from doubt to confidence, from isolation to inspiration. And though skeptics remained, Ariv knew one truth above all. Miracles exist not only in what the eyes can see, but in what the heart can believe. Ariv stood on the edge of the hill, the sun setting behind the distant mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange, pink, and gold. For the first time in his life, he felt completely alive, seeing the world in its full beauty, feeling the breeze on his face, and hearing the soft rustle of leaves as if every detail was a message meant only for him. He thought about how far he had come, from darkness to light, from fear to courage, from doubt to belief. The villagers gathered around him, smiling and whispering about the boy who had become a living miracle. Children ran up to him, asking questions, touching objects he pointed out, and tried to imitate what he had learned. Ariv guided them patiently, showing them how to observe the world, how to feel its colors and textures, and how to trust their own senses. He realized that his journey was no longer just about him. It was about inspiring others, spreading hope, and showing that miracles can happen when belief meets courage. His parents stood nearby, their faces glowing with pride and relief. Mira wiped away tears as she held Ariv's hand. "You have shown us the impossible," she whispered. "You have given us hope beyond hope." Rajan nodded silently, his eyes misty, feeling a mix of awe and gratitude. Ariv smiled, understanding that the gift of sight was not just for seeing, but for connecting, loving, and sharing. The miracle had changed his life, but had also changed everyone around him. Ariv looked at Guru Dev, who had been quiet throughout the evening, watching with calm eyes. "I could never have imagined this," Ariv said softly. "I can see, I can feel, and I can live." but I don't know how to thank you. The healer smiled gently. You do not need to thank me. Ariv, your courage, your patience, and your belief created this miracle. I only guided you, but the journey is yours, and what you do with it will inspire many. That night, as stars began to twinkle in the sky, Ariv sat quietly, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. He remembered the years of darkness, the struggles, the doubts, and the moments when hope seemed impossible, and he realized that every challenge, every tear, every tiny flicker of belief had prepared him for this moment. Sight was not simply seeing. It was understanding, experiencing, and appreciating life in its fullness. He thought of the small blind child by the river he had once comforted, and the children in the village he was now teaching. Ariv knew that his vision was more than a gift for himself. It was a gift for others, a way to bring hope, inspiration, and guidance to those who had lost faith. The miracle was not just in the mud, the chance, or the healer. It was in the courage to believe, the determination to endure, and the willingness to embrace the unknown. The next morning, Ariv walked through the village with new confidence, noticing every detail with wonder, greeting people by name, pointing out the beauty in ordinary things, and sharing stories of hope and belief. People followed him, inspired by his journey, and the village became a place of miracles, not because of magic, but because of faith, courage, and the extraordinary power of one boy's belief. As he stood by the river, watching the sunlight dance on the water, Ariv felt a quiet peace, a deep understanding that life was now full of endless possibilities. He whispered to himself, I once lived in darkness, but now I see. I see the world, I see love, I see hope, and I will share it with everyone. And in that moment, Ariv understood that the true miracle was not only seeing, but living fully, embracing life, and inspiring others to believe in the impossible. His journey, which had begun with fear and doubt, ended in light, understanding, and hope. Ariv had learned that sometimes miracles come in the most unexpected ways, and that with faith, patience, and courage, even the impossible can become real. And as the sun set behind the hills, painting the world in colors he had once only imagined, Ariv smiled, ready to face every new day with eyes wide open and a heart full of wonder.